All right, class. This is the first video in our lecture on section 4.1, exponential functions in the textbook. And looking at the top of your lecture notes on page 1, the definition of an exponential function. A function of the form f of x equals a to the x, where a is a positive real number, not equal to 1, is called an exponential function. A is the base of the exponential, and you recognize x as the exponent in the exponential. So f of x equals a to the x is an exponential function with a base of a. So an example here, example 1, the function f of x equals 5 to the x power is an exponential function with a base of 5. And evaluating exponential functions, we evaluate exponential functions just the same way that we do any other function. To evaluate this exponential function at x equals -2, we just put in -2 in for x on the right hand side. So f of -2 is equal to 5 to the -2 power. And remember, a minus sign in the exponent means reciprocal. So 5 to the -2 power is the same as 1 over to 5 to the +2 power, which is 5 squared, and 5 squared is equal to 25. So f of -2 is equal to 1/25. And to evaluate f of 0, right, we just put in 0 in for x on the right hand side, and f of 0 is equal to 5 to the 0 power, and you know any non-zero number raised to the 0 power is equal to 1. In the next example, we have the exponential function f of x is equal to 4 to the x power. 4 is the base of the exponential function. And so to evaluate this exponential function at x equals 1/2, we just put in 1/2 in for x on the right hand side. And we have f of 1/2 is equal to 4 to the 1/2 power. And you know from our study of rational exponents, anything raised to the 1/2 power means square root. And so 4 to the 1/2 power is equal to square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So f of 1/2 is equal to 2. To evaluate f of square root of 3, we put in square root of 3 in for x up here. And so we have f of square root of 3 is equal to 4 to the square root of 3 power. That's the exact value of the function at x equals square root of 3. To get a decimal value, you have to use a decimal approximation. You have to use your calculator and type in 4 to the square root of 3 power in your calculator. You get 11.036 to 3 decimal places. There are some homework problems in Web Assign, excuse me, where you have to evaluate an exponential function and write the answer out to 3 decimal places. Next, we're going to evaluate the exponential function at x equals -2. And so again, right, we just put in -2 in for x up here. And we have f of -2 is equal to 4 to the -2 power, which is the same as 1 over to 4 plus 2 power. And 4 squared is equal to 16. And 1/16 is equal to 0.0625. So both those are 1/16 and 0.0625 are exact answers. So f of -2 is equal to 1/16, which is exactly equal to 0.0625 as a decimal. Okay. To evaluate our exponential function at x equals 0.4, we just put in 0.4 in for x in the exponent. And so we have f of 0.4 is equal to 4 to the 0.4 power. Again, this is the exact value of the function. To write it as a decimal value to 3 decimal places, right, you need your calculator, and you plug in 4 to the 0.4 power in your calculator, you get 1.741. On page 2 of your lecture note handout, we have the exponential function g of x is equal to 1/5 to the x plus 1 power. Now, even though x is replaced with x plus 1 in the exponent, this is still an exponential function. What this turns out to be, and we'll probably talk about this later in the semester, is this is a transformed exponential function. And we'll talk about the transformations of functions later in the semester. So this is still an exponential function, even though x has been replaced with x plus 1. So to evaluate the function at x equals 1/2, we just put 1/2 in for x in the exponent, and we have 1/5 to the 1/2 plus 1 power. Well, 1/2 plus 1 in the exponent simplifies to 3/2, and then, so this is the exact answer for g of 1/2, 1/5 to the 3/2 power. But then using your calculator, 1/5 to the 3/2 power is equal to 0.089 to 3 decimal places. Now, to simplify in getting 0.089, right, remember 1/5 is the same as 1 divided by 5. Remember, 1/5 is equal to 0.2, and 3/2 is equal to 1.5. So if you type in 0.2 raised to the 1.5 power in your calculator, you'll get 0.089. Next, we're going to evaluate the function at x equals square root of 3. So we got to put square root of 3 in for x up here. And we have 1/5 to the square root of 3 plus 1 power. And so this can be a little tricky in evaluating this correctly in your calculator. Right? Remember, 1/5 is the same as 0.2. But when you raise it to the square root of 3 plus 1 power, you got to put square root of 3 plus 1 in parentheses. Otherwise, you'll only raise 0.2 to the square root of 3 power. You won't raise 0.2 to the square root of 3 plus 1 power. So remember, right, square root of 3 plus 1 has to go in parentheses. And so you have like 0.2 raised to square root of 3 plus 1 in parentheses, and you get 0.012. To evaluate the function at x equals minus 1.3, we have to put minus 1.3 in for x up here, okay? And then after we do that, we have g of minus 1.3 is equal to 1/5 to the minus 1.3 plus 1 power. Well, minus 1.3 plus 1 simplifies to minus 0.3. And so in evaluating, right, remember 1/5 is the same as 0.2. And so in evaluating this, right, you take 0.2 to the minus 0.3 power on your calculator. And remember, you will have to put that, you know what, yeah, I don't think you have to put that in parentheses because that's a single number. So you just hit 0.2 to the minus 0.3 power, and you get 1.621 to 3 decimal places.